morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Lisa Schwartz, ITSM Academy founder and Chief Experience Officer, and I'm very excited about today's webinar. We have with us Rose Gibson. Rose, we just figured out, started training for ITSM Academy 13 years ago. So she is now a teenager. And for those of you that don't know, this year the Academy celebrated our 21st anniversary. So we're old enough to drink. Rose has I apologize for not being on camera. Internet is down at the house. Rose has a very jam-packed presentation for us today. So I will just quickly say that Rose has a long, I didn't mean to say it that way, Rose, but Rose has a very long track record in leadership, in consulting, and in training. She was an ITIL V2 service manager, a V3 ITIL expert, and is now one of our ITIL masters. And Rose, I am turning it right over to you, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Lisa, for that kind introduction. And hello, everyone. The world is evolving, and we're living in that evolving world. So how we go about crafting, adapting, and assuring our business strategy has to lend itself not only to an open mind, but an innovative spirit. And so as we work through some of the ideas and approaches for creating that strategy, it should be clear that these are not in lieu of, but rather will enhance your current, more modern approaches and methods to ensure strategic success. So let's honor the past, but bring in the new with business strategy assurance via ITIL 4 guiding principles. As we look at our agenda today, over on the left-hand column, you see we're going to talk a little bit about strategy to kind of set the stage and give some context for the follow-on information. And then we're going to look at how we can use the guiding principles to create and craft our strategy, but also to make it actionable. And then we're going to look at cascading objectives for adaptation, alignment, measuring throughout the various levels of the organization. And then just a little bit on the end about other ways that you can use the guiding principles within your scope of control and your sphere of influence. So all the way through over on the right, we're going to look at how you can create, use, and empower your strategy using the guiding principles. And time allowing at the end, whatever time we have left, we'll have some Q&A. So please be prepared to give us your questions, and we'll stay on a little bit longer if need be to answer, make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. So let's start with just an introduction and a little bit about strategy to set the stage. And so when we're talking about business strategy, the business strategy is going to define your organization's purpose. What is your organization's purpose for being? It gives us the why, or it should, right? The strategy should give us the why. In addition to having a clearly defined mission, vision, we have to also identify in our strategy what are the goals and the objectives. And a lot of times that's done, but are we really measuring to those goals and objectives? So we're going to take a look at how the ITIL 4 guiding principles can help us with all of that. Traditionally, most organizations have a formal strategic planning session once a year, and they identify the top 3 to 5 strategic initiatives for that year, and then they communicate them out to the organization. I've seen kind of glossy trifold messages that are sent out, sometimes videos or other forms of communication to try to get and permeate that strategic initiative throughout the organization. The intent and benefit of your strategy gives us, everyone in your organization, destination and direction, or it should, right? Everything we say, everything we do, every improvement initiative should be validated and checked against your strategic goals and objectives. And what I'm finding as I'm working with others in the industry is that that's not happening. right? We have very subjective projects and initiatives as it relates to continual improvement, but rarely do I see how they're aligning that to the strategic goals, the mission, and the organization's purpose for being. So we want to make sure that our strategy is going to allow us to move through that strategic roadmap to ensure strategic success. So stop for a moment and consider, do you know your organization's vision, mission, and strategy? Let's take a poll here. Nina's put up a poll, and the question is surrounding that question. Are you aware? Let's kind of get a poll and get a pulse of your strategic awareness for the audience that's here today. So please come to your tablet or phone or whatever device you're using and respond to this poll. And as you're responding to this poll and the next polling question, there's two here, two very short, brief polls. The next polling question is a more pivotal question that will come up once we get through this first question, do you know your strategy? And that second poll is going to be regarding if you do know your strategy, are you measuring back? So thank you, Nina. Nina from ITSM Academy is working in the background, and we see that the majority of you are somewhat familiar and you know the basics. Sometimes it's a best guess, isn't it? Sometimes we think we know, but we couldn't really solidly say, this is our strategy and this is what the business wants us to do. So this is a good indicator for why you're here. It's a good indicator for why we need to look at some approaches and techniques to get assurance of our business strategy. So Nina, if you could bring up the second poll, and like I said, this is a more pivotal question. And a lot of this is going to be based on the results of the first poll. It says, are you measuring your improvement initiatives to ensure they align with strategic outcomes? I would guess that more people than not will say no to the second question. Most employees don't even know the vision, mission, goals, and objectives of their organization. And if they do know, they're not scoping and measuring their improvement activities back to those objectives accordingly. So take a moment and respond to this poll. And while you're doing that, just a little bit more about setting the stage with strategy. Good. So we see that sometimes is the majority. So the majority of you say sometimes we measure, but if you look, there is 26 and then 14 and 2%, right? About half generally on average do not. So many of you, 21%, said yes, consistently. We always measure and align to our strategic initiatives. That's where we want the industry to move, right? That's what needs to happen in order to ensure success not only for this year, but for the next decade. All right, thank you, Nina. I appreciate that. So a business strategy is not static. We talked about that yearly strategic planning session. A business strategy is not static. It's not just a one-time yearly meeting where we meet and set up, these are our initiatives. It might be easier if it was, but to be fair, business requirements are dynamic. And therefore, our strategies, as they shift and morph and change, we at all levels of the organization need to shift and morph and adapt to those new strategies. And in order to do that, critical to enabling that is that you have to have a system. You have to have a system for ongoing monitoring and measuring with feedback loops. And that will be critical to getting assurance and alignment with your strategy. So clearly defined and understood guidelines, along with what we're going to look today at the ITIL 4 guiding principles, are going to help us to shape the culture and morph your organization into one that's more malleable, malleable enough to adopt and adapt to meet the dynamic landscape of your business. So in this segment, we're going to look at the ITIL 4 guiding principles and the best practices to show how they can help create your strategy up front, but also how these principles can ensure your strategic success through your strategic, tactical, and operational day-to-day activities. All right, thank you everybody for engaging in those polls. So before we get started, I don't want to presume that everybody is aware of the ITIL 4 guiding principles. So this is an introduction to the ITIL 4 guiding principles. And we'll start with this one, focus on value. And we'll briefly go through these, and then we'll apply those to those things that we just spoke of. So focus on value. There's always intrinsic value for the organization, business value. I think ITIL refers to that as value captured, right? There's always cost savings, increased productivity, right? Efficiencies, benefits for the internal business. But that's not this. When we see focus on value in the guiding principles, we're talking about CX, UX, customer experience, user experience. How does the customer feel? And for that reason, a lot of organizations today are focusing on the XLA framework. And that's XLA, as in experience, extra. Right? How does the customer feel? What's happening at the end of that value chain? The next guiding principle is start where you are. And of course, here, that's inferring that you don't reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start from scratch. Leverage from existing collateral, but know that there's going to be some processes, and I'm thinking specifically as it relates to change management, right? But others, there's going to be some areas where we are going to have to radically rethink and redesign our processes. But we're going to leverage from existing as we move forward. The next guiding principle is progress iteratively with feedback. So this is kind of a nod to Agile, isn't it? So we see that ITIL 4 is embracing this Agile approach. But you notice I've highlighted with feedback. Feedback infers a system. And a system is made up of people, process, and technology. And so if we're going to get feedback and we're focusing on value and we're leveraging from existing, who's going to give the feedback? Where is that feedback going to go? How is it going to be stored? Who's going to pick it up? And more importantly, once we get the feedback through our system, made up of people, process, and technology, how is the work that results from that feedback? How is that work going to be prioritized? So sometimes people focus on progress iteratively, but without this feedback loop, which infers this very complex system, right? It's all for naught. And here's a very powerful guiding principle: collaborate and promote visibility. The difference between collaboration and communication is if you have a problem that you're trying to solve, sometimes we communicate, this is the initiative, this is the project, this is how we're going to solve it. Collaborate means you're going to have a cross-functional team. You're going to get together with the practitioners and your stakeholders, and you're going to come up with a solution. Somebody's not going to tell you. But also there's a second half of this, and that's promote visibility of the work. And there's a lot of ways that we can promote visibility. For example, if you're a product developer, you might have a burn down chart. You could use, for cross-functional teams and support, perhaps Kanban boards to promote the visibility of work. Or value stream mapping. That's a real advantageous tool as it relates to promoting visibility across the value chain. The next guiding principle is think and work holistically. And so this kind of is indicating that we need to embrace systems thinking. We work within the ecosystems, so we need to think big, know what the big picture is, AKA the strategy, right? Know what the big picture is, think big, but following these other guidelines, act small, right? And then finally, I was just joking this morning. I said, if complexity was a goal, I'd have that down to an art. This is a challenge for us, especially in IT, trying to keep it simple, but making it real and practical as well. And then the last one, optimize and automate. Bang, right? There's the power punch at the end, because optimizing and automating is really going to increase and optimize the outcomes from all of these other guiding principles. Now, ITSM Academy has a YouTube channel, and they have a lot of free webinars available to you. Also, there is a resource link that Nina's going to put into chat, not only for these webinars, but there's a lot of white papers, information on certifications, and much, much more. Take advantage of the free training and the free resources. And Nina's going to put the link to that resource page in to chat. So Nina, if you could do that while we follow through. But the reason that I say that is that there's a video out there, and it's called ITIL 4 Guiding Principles Leading the Way. And it goes into great depth and detail on each one of these. So if this is your first exposure, I would strongly recommend that you go out there and get more detail on each one of these. But our focus today is to introduce them briefly here, and then to show you how you can use them to craft, adapt, and ensure your business strategy. So in order to do that, we want to use the ITIL 4 guiding principles and frame our strategy around these 7 key principles that we just walked through. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So let's say that all of us here, we all work for the same company. And we love our company. It's a growing, living, breathing company on the move. And you see at the top of the screen this strategic statement. Our company, our brilliant company, our fictitious company here, wants to drive customer-centric growth through agility, collaboration, and continuous improvement. Brilliant. That sounds great, doesn't it? But how can we use the guiding principles to make this robust, to help us to lead, to help give direction and destination? How can we use the guiding principles so that we can make our strategy provision a decision-making tool for everybody upstream and downstream? That's what we want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this strategic statement from our fictitious company, and we're going to enhance this. And you would do this right in your strategic documentation. So there's a lot of templates and your traditional strategy documentation. What we're going to talk about would be what you would add and enhance that documentation with. So we're going to walk through the guiding principles and apply it to our business strategy, starting with this one, focus on value. So as we look at this statement for focus on value, it says our business strategy centers around delivering exceptional value. That's kind of general, but okay. By understanding and anticipating our expectations of our customers, we will streamline product development, service offerings, and operational processes to ... I want to pause here because it doesn't just say that we're going to streamline product development, we're going to streamline service offerings. Sometimes that's the message we get. Notice the preface. It says, by understanding and anticipating the customer's expectations and needs, they're going to do that, right? And that's very different. So we see a focus on CX and UX, the customer experience, and the user experience, but specifically this kind of blows out the detail for this part of that higher level strategic statement, driving customer-centric growth, right? It adds a lot more weight to the statement. It gives more detail. So organizations are increasingly aware that that focus has to be on the customer and the user. And we see that enforced here in this strategic statement. So now we're going to continue to enhance our strategy. And so we're going to make it more meaningful by looking at start where you are. And this guiding principle is alluding to what we discussed in our introduction. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch, but leverage from existing, start where you are. The next one is progress iteratively with feedback. And you'll note that I've highlighted with feedback in the previous segment. And that's a key aspect of doing this. Another thing that I like about this particular detailed, enhanced description, right, is that it talks about delivering, each iteration will deliver tangible value, right, while responding to changing circumstances. So this strategic statement, using this guiding principle, is really speaking back to this. Look at the top of the screen, right? Through agility, right? But it's giving a lot more detail to explain it to me, right? What does that mean? And so by using the guiding principles to shape your strategy, not only does it make it robust, but it begins to give us enough detail that we can make real decisions, right? It leads, it gives destination, it guides. Take a look at number 4. And I'd like everybody to open up chat. And I believe that Nina has enabled chat for you. So once again, come to your device if you're in listening mode, and everybody open up chat. And as you're opening up chat, take a look at this guiding principle and how we've used it to enhance our strategic aspire and our strategic documentation. And so read through number 4. And what I would like you to do is to put into chat what stands out for you. How is this helpful as it relates to our strategic statement above? What is it that kind of leaps out? What's significant? I guess that's the word that I was looking for. What's significant for you here? We want to look for those significant things to determine how does this help lead, set direction, or help others with decision making as it relates to collaboration and cross-functional teams. And I see those responses coming in. Keep them coming in. All right. And I see that someone says that they like that this draws out and makes apparent that we must include partners, right? So that's a key one. That's right here. It says collaborate across departments, teams, and with external partners. And I'm thinking probably that stands out for you because sometimes that's missed, isn't it? We might have some discussion internally and, oh, we forgot this key stakeholder over here that can really make or break our success. So that's a good one. All right. And then I also see many of you like that this emphasizes collaboration across all levels of the organization. Where is that? Okay, so here it says we will work together to create transparency. Oh, that's probably what you're liking. Transparency across all levels of the organization. All right, that's real key. So that's going to infer, oh, it's not just us IT. That means we have to have transparency and collaboration with customers and business partners. That's going to be a rude awakening, isn't it, to some of our customers and business partners to know that they have a role to play. They can't just throw something over the fence and then blame the service provider when it doesn't meet their needs. So that's a real good one. Good catch there. And yes, collective problem solving, collective problem solving. Where is that? Oh, it's down here on the end. It says, it talks about transparency across all levels of the organization, open communication, and collective problem solving. I'm glad that stood out for you because that directly relates to this, doesn't it? Collaborate. Remember the distinction between collaboration and communication? Collaborate means we're going to have the problem, but we don't know what the solution is. We're going to have this cross-functional discussion, right, with our stakeholders and come up with a solution. So collective problem solving. So the reason that I wanted to kind of call these things out is to show you how powerful this is. There's a lot more detail here. And I see those are still coming in. I don't have time to read all of those, but thank you for engaging and coming into chat and interacting with our discussion here. But this kind of shows how the guiding principles and shaping our strategy with these guiding principles can really make it workable, right? Lead, guide, direct, use as a decision-making tool. If you look at this statement at the top, those are the kinds of things that we kind of see in communications frequently. And sometimes these kind of statements just blow by us like air, right? Drive customers, yep, collaboration, yep. This really makes it meaningful. This really adds enough detail. And yes, this would go right into your strategic document for everybody to see. Number 5 talks about thinking and working holistically. And the focus here is on processes, systems, and people. But notice this. See, it talks about processes, systems, and people. But sometimes we focus on that. Yep, we got to focus on our processes. But the real key is this: recognizing the interdependencies between processes, systems, and people. This is that systems thinking. Think big, right? Act small. Know what the ecosystem is, what is the big picture, and what do I need to do for this initiative as it relates to those interdependencies between processes, systems, and people. So ecosystems, systems thinking will be key. And then finally, my favorite, keep it simple and practical. The focus for this strategy is on the practicality of solutions. And you notice a nod here to agile, speed, and experience being brought in to reinforce that idea for your strategy. And then number 7, optimize and automate. The intent here is, it says to free up resources to focus on innovative and higher value activities. Now, look at our strategic statement that we started with at the top. Drive customer-centric growth through agility, collaboration, and continuous improvement. There's nothing in there about automation. So here's another key. By using the guiding principles, that's bringing out something that may not have been an emphasis, right? It's emphatically stressing that we need to look at smart automation to free up resources, which could have been a subjective, hard sell for somebody who realized that that needed to be done to achieve the overarching strategic statement. And so that's how you can use the guiding principles to shape your strategy, to make it much more robust. But strategy requires action. And so once we do this, right, we look at our strategic initiative, and you can bring in any strategic initiative or any improvement initiative or any action, just the same way as we brought in this business strategic statement at the top, and do the same thing with the guiding principles. It's not exclusive just to strategy. But here's what we've done. This is what we did in the previous segment, and it's highlighted here. But now that we have this, and we've made this more meaningful, we've taken our strategic statement and put in enough strategic high-level information to make this really guide and lead and make decisions. Now you can start looking at actions. And so I want to call out something here. In our previous statement that's highlighted, it says ensure value at every touch point. That's good, isn't it? We want to ensure value at every touch point. What we did here, if you take a look, speaks to what needs to be done in detail to meet that strategic initiative on the top. And once you get that, and you have clarity on what needs to be done, now you can start looking at a high level, right? It's still at a very high level, but you can start looking at what needs to be done. So if our mission here was to ensure that value at every touch point, then our action says create a customer journey map to identify touch points and interactions. And the actions now are speaking to how we're going to achieve what was brought forth in the detail for each one of the guiding principles. For example, take a look at the next one, start where you are. We blew that out as it related to our strategic initiative, and now we're looking at the actions. If you're going to start where you are, you need to know where R is, right? Where are we? And kind of get level set. And maybe you're not going to do a comprehensive audit. You would word this accordingly for your organization. Maybe it's just an assessment so that we can move fast. But the idea is you need to have some form of assessment and analysis and agreement and get level set on where we are before you can move forward. And then as we look at 3 and 4 here, it speaks to after each phase, collect feedback. Again, stressing the feedback and the focus on the customers, which would be a system. And then regular collaboration between departments. But also notice this, in order to collaborate, there might be some cultural structural shifts because it says establish cross-functional teams. So what's highlighted in blue is more kind of just emphasizing a few bullets for how we're going to achieve the previous details that described in full what needed to be done. And then as we look at 5, 6, and 7, I wanted to draw out a little bit something different. Notice in these highlights, here it talks about the value chain. This is from the ITIL 4 service value system. It talks about adopting lean methodologies to cut out non-value added activities. That's value stream mapping, right? That verbiage is code for create some value stream and use value stream mapping as an analysis tool. And then it talks about robotic process automation. And here we see agility being brought agile. And so my point that I want to make is that we see many different frameworks, standards, and approaches being brought forth as we make our strategy actionable. Do not silo the frameworks. I've had customers say, well, I work in development, so we use Agile, but they work in support, so they use ITIL. You cannot silo the frameworks and your approaches. You have to look at things from an organizational strategic perspective, and then think of those frameworks and standards and approaches as tools in your toolbox. And how are you going to use them to dovetail together to meet your overarching strategic initiatives? One thing that we talked about in our setup was alignment, but also that strategy is not static, right? And so we're going to look at a model for cascading objectives to help address this, and then talk about the guiding principles and how they fit in. So when the organization's mission and strategy are understood, like we did with the guiding principles, we made it very clear, objectives can cascade from them. So once you get those strategic statements using the guiding principle, and you have the actions, you can use those to create your objectives and the targets that need to be met. And then cascading those objectives translates the strategy from one organizational level to the next. So sometimes a visual is good. When we're talking about translating the strategy from one organizational level to the next, sometimes it helps to get your thought around strategic, tactical, and operational plans that have to be created to meet that strategy. But here's the model. We started over here. This model is representing here a service provider who is a part of a larger parent organization. And as we look at this, this is where we've been focusing with our guiding principles. So once you have your actions, then you can start forming your goals. These are your key indicators. This is your measurement system to ensure that you're meeting the mission. So every one of these gray arrows is inferring a feedback loop. But we also have feedback loops to and from the different levels, strategic, tactical, and operational. So we design from the top down and we deliver from the bottom up. We design from the top down and deliver to the bottom up with these nested do loops or feedback loops for monitoring and measuring. What's really key about this, what's really exciting about, it looks like a very simple model, right? But this could be the juggernaut that pivots your organization to success and even exceed what you had hoped for in your strategy. It's very powerful. And one of the real advantages of that power is, let's say that there's some legislation that comes down the pipe, or something's happening in the external marketplace and you have to change your strategy. Well, as you shift the strategy here, right, everything shifts down. You heard that, right? Everything shifts downstream. And then we start monitoring and measuring and adapting. So each one of these feedback loops is a trigger for an improvement plan or a change. So in comes the continual improvement model. And as we're looking at the improvement model, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, it starts with what is the business vision, goals, and objectives. And we get that from what we just created, right? And then we can look at what is the vision for this scope of effort as it relates to that business vision. So using these two together with our strategic initiatives are really key to be able to measure, get appropriate non-subjective improvement initiatives, and know that we're hitting the mark. Or when we're not hitting the mark, we can adapt. But here's the key. All of this, all the way through, is powered and empowered by the guiding principles. Focus on value. Start where you are. Progress iteratively. And these are not just, we don't just collaborate and promote visibility for the continual improvement. These guiding principles bleed through everything we say, everything we do, every action, every project, every improvement initiative, every tool update, right? Everything we say, everything we do, everything we think should be framed by the guiding principles. And by doing so, you begin to shift and morph your culture into something that's malleable to adapt to changing and dynamic strategic initiatives. So we've been looking at how you can use the guiding principles to help craft, adapt, and align your strategy at all levels of the organization. But I would be amiss if I didn't point out to you that the ITIL guiding principles can be utilized in a lot of different areas. As a matter of fact, I had another whole section here that identified the top 3 trends for this year and how you could use the guiding principles to meet the challenges that those trends present. So you can that's a cliffhanger, Lisa, for a follow-on um, uh, webinar to talk about how can we address trends and challenges that would impact our strategy. So we'll kind of leave that to TBD for the next couple months here, kind of watch for that. But what I want to point out here is that we said that the ITIL 4 guiding principles are designed to be flexible and they're applicable to various contexts. So try to think about what is your scope of control? Where can you apply the guiding principles within your scope of control? Scope of control is where you have decision-making authority. This is where you can directly make decisions. And everybody has a scope of control. Some of us over the entire organization, some over a team. Some of us, our scope of control is over ourselves, right? We can control the decisions that we make and how we act and how we speak. Your sphere of influence is likely much larger than your scope of control. So an example of how you can use the guiding principles within your scope of control is, let's say that you're in a leadership role and your scope might be to include the team's operations or decision-making around resource allocation, right? So as you're doing that resource allocation, right, focus on value, keep it simple, start where you are. And within your sphere of influence, an example might be, let's say you're just starting to join in on one of those cross-functional teams, right? Focus on value as you're discussing in those teams, right? So everything we say, everything we think within our scope of control, and especially everything that we do, the actions that we take, can be framed by the ITIL guiding principle. It's a cultural hack. It's a cultural hack because by doing so, this is going to permeate throughout the organization and start shifting the way people think. And once you shift the way you think, you can shift the way you work and glean the kind of efficiencies that you hoped for in your strategic success. And what about the areas crying out for action? We all know what those are. There are some hot things that we could fix right now. And so just do it, right? I was working with one company and they have a new motto and it is just do it. Let's do it. Use the guiding principle for where you live. And I'd like to before I turn this over to ITSM Academy for Q&A, just kind of leave you with this thought. The ITIL 4 guiding principles act as a North Star. They really do. It's not just fluff. This is not hyperbole. This is real, actionable kind of technique. It ensures that decisions are aligned with your core principles and your mission and purpose for your organization. And these principles provide consistency and clarity throughout the entire organization so that you can navigate freely to ensure your success. So I do hope you are inspired, that you stay curious and that you stay inspired, and that you too can ensure your business strategy by looking at where can you start today with the ITIL 4 guiding principles. I mentioned that there's some resources available to you. There is an ITIL 4 guiding principle poster and other resources that are a lot of resources. I don't have time to go into them all. But here's kind of a high-level page that talks about some of them. this ITIL 4 guiding principles poster is available to you. You can print this, enlarge it, laminate this. We have several organizations that have this plastered, everywhere within their organizations, and sometimes even comes in to every meeting in collaborative online remote meetings. So that kind of helps people to, if someone starts going down a wormhole, right, you can say, okay, we agreed, we're going to focus on value. So let's look at this from the customer or the defined outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So use that as you can. And I'm just going to leave this for you to kind of explore and experiment with. The recording and the deck will be made available to you from ITSM Academy. And so this link is in there, and the link is also in chat. So if you're with us today live, you can get the link to these resources in chat. If you're listening online from the future recording, then at any time you can go out to ITSM Academy and chat with ITSM Academy support personnel about any questions you might have. So at this time, I'm going to turn this back to Lisa Schwartz for Q&A. And I want to sincerely thank you all for listening today. All right, so Lisa.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Rose. I have some thoughts and some questions, and as we wait for questions from others to roll in, we Nina, can you throw up that last little poll? As you were talking, it really got me curious about something, and I'm wondering. So the question really is the guiding principle that my organization is the strongest at, I believe. If everybody could just pick the one. And that's because I've never asked a group of people that question before, honestly. And I'm really interested in what the answer is. And I will tell you that as you were talking, several months ago, we did a webinar that was getting and keeping executive buy-in. And there was Nina's going to throw the link to that one into chat for us too. But that part of that was, they were really strongly encouraging people, be it service desk agents or, level 2 support or anyone inside of the organization to be prepared to end up in the elevator with your senior leadership and have an elevator speech.
Your
And it
elevator
really,
pitch. Yeah.
right. And it really occurs to me that the knowledge that you've given all of us today, boy, what a great elevator pitch it is to say we're aligning to these guiding principles. I think that would be incredibly powerful because the question and answer in that session, a lot of people were like, I wouldn't know what to say. And so it's David Cannon and Ken Jarvis and Donna Knapp presented that one. So there's lots of good advice in that one too. But I feel like I love your idea of a sequel to this. And then I feel like that's a bolt on to this, that's some pretty powerful knowledge for organizations to continue to improve their services. So,
Lisa, one thing that I wanted to bring forward that I didn't get in was the value of the digital and IT strategy um, course and training and certification. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because that directly relates to exactly what we've been talking about. It's not so much about using the guiding principles, but it's digital and IT strategy holistically. And this could fit into that.
It really does. Thanks. Thank you, Rose. That's our next DITS class, as it's called, is scheduled for, I'm going to say April 1 through 4. And to Rose's point, it covers a lot more than the guiding principles. But I think that DITS and HVIT, high velocity IT, are really game changers. And, yesterday, ITIL Foundation celebrated its 5th anniversary. So it's 5, you're 13, I'm 21. We're looking good. And, the organizations are it took a lot of organizations who were really vested in ITIL v3 and the service life cycle, um, time to see the advantages in some ways to the ITIL 4. And I think that those two classes now, the learners coming out of them today, now that they have their organizations have moved toward ITIL 4, they're able to take the learnings from those classes and really start to apply those things to, thrive, not just survive, but thrive in many different ways. So and I'm sorry, we never, I have a real strict policy about not selling in webinars. I didn't mean that as a sales pitch so much as I'm just excited to see that organizations that we've worked with for so long are really making great strides
And it
with
starts
ITIL
here,
4.
doesn't it? It starts with
Yeah,
your
it
IT
does.
strategy. If that's off, everything is off. But I noticed that I just opened up chat. So if you haven't done so, please do so because I noticed that Nina just put in a 10% discount code. So if you're interested in that training, that is a strategic certification as well, and it's one that's really sought after in the industry. So if this is an area of interest for you, take advantage of that. Kind of thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for hanging out with us for the hour. And so this is really interesting. The poll results on this last one are pretty even. And optimize and automate is listed at 25%, so in the number one spot. And it makes me wonder how much of that is
Scoped.
based on it, right. And, we see organizations that are utilizing AI with
Oh,
I have concerns about risk and governance that maybe, but I wonder how much of that is it leaped forward because of how AI adoption has leapt forward in the last 18 months.
and we have to
Mm,
go there, right? For some organizations, I believe it's not just going to be a matter of meeting your strategic success, but it's going to be survival.
right, exactly. And I'm seeing a lot of thanks for the great information, Rose, but I'm not actually seeing any uh, questions. So let me do one more call out. We've got Rose we've got an idle master for 8 more minutes. And if you have a question that's not even specifically related to today's topic, but you've got a challenge with something, Rose is glad to help. Patrick, I'm sorry. Again, my internet's down, so I'm doing this from my phone. I don't see the question. If you can help me.
I'll jump in here. The question
Thank you,
from
Nina.
Pat, yes, was, Rose, could you repeat the statement about going from top to bottom and bottom up? It was a few slides back.
Yes, we design from the top down. So it starts with your business strategy, and then you have those cascading objectives for your strategic, tactical, and then operational levels. And so we design from the top down using our strategic initiatives. And then we set the measurement systems, our key performance indicators, and our lower level metrics and measurements for each one of those levels. But we deliver from the bottom up using the feedback loops from those measurements. Patrick, hopefully that kind of answered your question. We design from the top down and we embed those nested feedback loops so that we can validate that we're achieving what was designated in the design. And we deliver from the bottom up using the continual improvement model to adopt and adapt all the way through.
Oh, and Rose, I am loving Mark's question. Is there a relationship between cascading objectives and OKRs framework? Can OKR be used in this way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like there's another webinar because that um, could be and effectively is with some organizations. A lot of organizations are have that traditionally their service management office was really kind of run on KPIs, have really moved to OKRs. And I think it would be very interesting to see the cascading alignment there. But it was a question for you.
Because those key requirements essentially are your indicators.
Right. All right. So any other questions? I really enjoyed today, Rose, and you give me a lot to think about. Oh, and Linda has a question. I'm sorry I missed that, Linda. I have an ITIL 4 Foundation cert. What is the next class for me to take when trying to drive a redesign of our service catalog to be customer facing versus IT centric?
I'm going to leave that one to you, Lisa.
Well, there is we're in the process at looking on onboarding a course about service catalog. I would say one of the, it's an area that is talked about in ITIL 4, but it's not, well, ITIL's not prescriptive, but it really isn't prescriptive, but there's a practice module around it. And that's one of the courses that we're looking at. So Linda, I'll have Lisa Fritz send you some information about what we're looking at. All right. You've really covered a lot of information, and I am delighted that we had time left for question and answer. And I think it was a great idea to split it into two parts, so we had time for this today. I'm not seeing any other questions, but I'll do one more call out.
And if you think of questions as you're looking at the follow-on recording or the slide deck, remember you can always go out to itsmacademy.com and there's a chat there available, and you can chat with support personnel and experts right there at ITSM Academy.
Yes, thank you for saying that, Rose, because that is, well, in our case, womaned, not manned, by our subject matter experts. It's our internal team. So, you're not getting a bot, you're getting a real human.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So go forth and remember, as Franny says, try it. Try it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, Rose. I'll talk to you soon.